Okay, here's part 2, and I'm going to start again with another cube. So we just did extrude in place. And that worked out pretty well. Now, if you've got a really regular sized little building with equidistant windows all over the face of it, you can, let's go ahead and remember you can set this up in the options box when you create the block as well as doing it here. Let's click everywhere. I like to drag and click all three of these, and I'm going to say 50 here. Go over here and hit the F key. And subdivisions, I'm going to subdivide it 3 times. And that's one way I can start. I'm going to undo that. Back to subdividing it 1 time. If I'm later in the game and this is gone, once I start making distortions to this guy, I can't reliably make changes over here. So let's say I have a long building, and I want to put a bank of windows here. Well, one of my friends here, this guy I kind of introduced you to, this is the Add Edge Loops tools, which we found, I think, here, Insert Edge Loop, and it's one guy I really like. So let's go to the options box. I can do one edge at a time and carefully place edges where I want, or I can add multiple edges. Just to example, if I want, let's say I want an edge loop there, and this is something you won't be able to do if you don't have clean quad geometry. It's going to stop halfway around. You're going to have to do it by hand, all kinds of problems. So let's put one there. And look, it appears I have the soft select tool on because I'm getting this gradient. So let me talk about that in just a second. I'm going to put another edge loop here to create a bank of windows just in this area. And then I'm going to divide it this way. I'll do multiples, and I'll do 10 edge loops equally dispersed through here. And I'm going to start my windows like around here on the second one. Okay, now I can take this edge loop and move it outward if I want, or not. While I'm thinking about it, a lot of people get the soft selection is on and they don't know it, and they get these strange results. Let's see if I can make it happen. I'm selecting a couple of, well, that's not really, I don't have enough geometry on this to really make it apparent, but what it's doing is selecting a hard selection where I selected and then graduating the selecting off. So if I made changes to this, and it's in the tool settings, so if you double click on it, you'll get this window. And let's say I'm going to expand it. Fall off radius, bigger, bigger, bigger. I need a really, this can be really helpful when you're doing your landscape. So let's, or your ground. Let's hide this guy. I'm going to hit Control H. Create a plane. Channel box. I just want to stop and show you this because students get blocked on this all the time, and they go, they're working for hours and they can't get out of it. So it's going to show up a whole lot better when I have a whole lot of geometry. Alright, so let's go to vertices. And they select some vertices and they want to move them. But it's going to start moving weird. Let me get rid of that point. It just creates a fall off curve that you may or may not appreciate. Okay, and the larger this is, you may see this is a time you may appreciate it very much. Okay, but if you want to make a hard selection, that's not what you want. So you've just got to go into the tool and simply turn that off. Okay, or on. If you're doing something more like sculpting, like creating your ground plane, you might want it on if you don't feel like dealing with the sculpture tools, or you have something very simple that you want to do and you just want a gradual fall off to the way you're moving the tool around. But I'm going to turn it off, go back to the channel box, select this object. I can select it over here too. I'm going to get rid of it and go back to my cube, which I hid using Control H, so I'm going to re-show using Shift H. Alright, so here I go. Here's an instance where you've got, say I'm just having these windows here and maybe a door down here, and no other distinguishing features but the surface of the material on the side. But I've got all this. Okay, and if you had all this and no details, I would tell you get rid of all this. There's no reason to have it. But it's supporting these details. And if I go around just getting rid of all these edges, then I'm not working in clean quads anymore. Which, if I'm at the end of a project and I'm trying to take down my poly count, that might be okay, except if I'm using a high resolution render, you cause all kinds of rendering artifacts in the doing that. And the other thing is I'll never be able to edit it again very well, because I've ruined my clean quads. So if I were to really want to do that, I think I would save a copy and then go ahead and do it on the get rid of it on the copy. But I won't in this course yell at you for this kind of thing if you've got windows or something at least on one side and all those are doing is supporting your clean quad. But if it's not supporting anything and there's no information, no detail that these edges are describing, then I'm going to have you get rid of them. Okay? So here's another way to extrude this entire bank of windows here. Let's go to Faces. I'm going to select, I'm holding Shift and selecting, oops. Sometimes the thing gets in my way, so I'm going to kind of select back and forth. Well, okay, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Is that 9? 1, 3, 4, 5, and 9. You see I have selected 9 faces in my object, which has 94 faces in all, and the entire scene has only 94 faces because this is the only object in the scene. So that's what this is about. Selected, the object that you've selected from, and the entire scene. You can tell how many verts, edges, faces, tries. So if I had 10, I would know that I have accidentally selected a face back here. Okay? So let's extrude again. Now here you're going to get some interesting things with the extrude tool. Let's leave it where it went and see how this is all acting like a bank. I don't want that. I want it acting individually. So there's this little blue circle back here. I'm going to select that, and now it's going to still not do what I want. I think what I want, keep faces together is on. Let's turn that off. Nope. The tool has changed, trust me, since 2015. Sorry, oops. I'm still trying to, let's leave it there. Okay, back over there. There we go. So it had defaulted to the correct place because you could tell because it came over here instead of being in the center. And if I wanted everything to act as one, it's easier to see this on a donut or something, and I'll show you that in just a moment. Well, we'll talk about that when I get on the donut, but here I go. I've left it. This will toggle between treating it as a whole and going from the center, or making it relative. So I've got it on relative, and I've got keep faces together off. In the other versions, you have to control right click to toggle keep faces together off. So I can, I can make these windowsills thin or no windowsills at all, and just come in and have my windows and hit G, and now extrude all these guys inside. So I have these, like, say a brick building with inset windows, okay? And then each window gets its own shelf like that, okay? So that's a way of making lots of windows, and now I can take two of these and make some double doors or whatever I might want to make. Let's see, what was the other tools? Make an undercut. Okay, sharp edges. That's something I want to address. For your first sketch, I don't expect softened edges. But when you're still in a really low poly situation, is the best time to take off the edges that you that are there, that are really harsh, that are going to stay sharp. I'm never going to change this edge here on this building. So I could have done this a couple of steps back, and probably should have, when it was just a simple cube. Let's make a simple cube. And I'll show you here. I'm just going to scale up. Let's render this real quickly. Let's put my nice blend material on here so we can see it a little better. Well, it's not very nice. I don't really like the color. Okay, let's just render that real quickly and see if default lighting is okay here. Alright, see that sharp edge? It's very CG looking, it's very amateur looking. No good, no good. Okay? I can bevel when I'm this simple, which I'm going to do 3 segments on my bevel. Apply. And you see how it beveled, and I can come over here if I don't make any other changes and go to the poly bevel. That's in my history, and see if I do delete history, all this down here will go away. Oops. Let's take the offset. I've got 2 zeros and a 7.0001. Nope. Nope. There we go. Now they're much closer together, and it looks a little more like, if you think you have a sharp edge, you don't. It's a little too close, but let's see even what that looks like. Let's save this. Okay, and see how the light catches on that edge? Much nicer. Okay, now here, down here, it's going to be a little more difficult to do that. Let's see if it behaves correctly. Select it as an object and do it again. Whoa, boy, okay. Did beautifully, except that it's like now I've got all this bloody geometry everywhere. Now I could experiment with this, because this tool, again, it also has changed. And I might find a way to get rid of all this business. But let's say I can't be bothered right now with that. Another way I can bevel just these specific edges that I want. Say I want something different over here, but I want to make sure these guys are beveled. That's where my friend Insert Edge Loop tool comes in, and I'm going to reset those settings so that I don't have multiple edges. Okay, back to, and I can just very carefully place an edge loop, and then that will allow me, I'm going to select all these edge loops. So you have to do a little more work. And bring them in just a twidge. And I have beveled that. Okay, I can do one on each side, and then let's try something else. If I do, now this is an experiment, so you know, be nice. I'm going to put an edge right here. Nope, that's not where I wanted it. I wanted it going this way, and one going this way. And now I can go back to Q. Now this is going to look pretty much the same because I haven't distorted, and that's why I shrank that top level. And this one I can just move in a twidge just to soften it. Okay, that's one way to do it. Now another way to do it might be to hit Control, hit Control, go to Vertices. So now I've got these vertices selected, and go, I'm looking for average. Oop, I think I saw it. Yeah, average vertices, and that'll soften. But I want to bring that back up. And I'm not sure that softened too much, but it could have done the work for me. It did. It kind of rounded that edge off. Okay, so let's see what those look like, those softened edges. Look, oops, I went a little too far. Let's see what this corner looks like. It's too big for, the scaling is not good at all here. Which is another thing, that'll make it look like a toy. That worked out really nicely. But it's better than it was. Okay, I just want to show you how you can do that. And again, you can see how it would have been a much better idea to do this when this was one big, simple cube before I ever began any detail work. Okay, let's see. I'm going to leave making an undercut to advanced, so I won't get you on sharp edges for your first iteration of your buildings. You're going to start simple and get more and more and more complex as you go, but it would behoove you to do that to when you make your first cube, to go ahead and get it beveled while it's still a very simple cube, before you add any dimensions, any extra. So then you can distort it. So we had it, I forgot where we had it, so we'll just apply it and go over here and, rest of my... Oh, select the thing, that'll help. Okay. Polybevel. And I had the fraction. I had it much smaller, 0.001. That's way too small. Okay, that looks pretty good. And then if I start there, those guys are done, and I can just I can start making my... I can either add edge loops now, like this. I can say, okay, give me that. I'm going to outline. I'm going to have one big window and maybe a door below. So I have this big window here. Faces, I'm hitting Q. Got my face there. Going to extrude it. Now I can say, well, let me pull it out. Now I can start already. Let me undo that. I can say scale it just a wee bit and bring it out just a wee bit. Gotta get in there close. And then so I can create the little bevels as I go. Okay, I hit G. So I'm going to do it again, and this time I'm coming out. That leaves these edges sharp, and I'll have to deal with those at another time. Hit G again. G again. G again. Now, let's say I don't want to do this 100 times. It's probably what you're thinking, right? If you have a whole bunch of windows. Well, maybe I'll make my windows as separate pieces of geometry. So let's say I get something I'm happy with. Let's see how this renders and make sure I don't have any... it looks to me like I didn't like I need to scale this row in. So if I select a face, shift select a second face, and shift double click a third face, I will get a ring of faces. Okay, another reason to keep your clean quad modeling. Now this was only 4, so that didn't help me much, but often you're going to get like 40 faces. And if I kind of just bring those guys in a little... Okay, let's say, okay, here's a window, and we're going to pretend I'm happy with it. Let's go ahead and... You can tell here, and it's not as perfect as I wanted, but please. If you waited on me to get everything perfect, we'd be here all day. Alright, so I like this window, and I want to keep it, and I want to reproduce it everywhere. So I want it to be a separate piece of geometry from my block building. I'm going to select all these faces from here. Well, I'll do an undercut to make them look good, so I'm just going to select these. Let me just do it like this. I'm holding the control key to deselect the guys I don't want. Spin around, make sure. Okay, I want to not separate. You would think separate. I want to, it's an E word, not extrude, extract. Okay, let's open the options box. Separate extracted faces with no offset because I don't want it moved. Apply. Okay, now I have created two pieces of geometry that are parented here, and if I select them I can delete the history and they'll be totally independent. And now this guy, I need to rename him. I can duplicate. I'm going to hit Control D and I can duplicate that, and now I've got all the windows that I want. And I can call this my, if I named it before I duplicated it, the name would duplicate. But look where the pivot is, then that's so unhelpful. So what I want to do is select it and say modify center pivot, and now that's going to be more helpful. Now I can go ahead and reuse this, but if I just stick it over here, let's just bring it over here and try and put it in this space. So I'm going to take that face and delete it, and I'm going to rotate this guy 180. What are you talking about? Where's my channel box? Well, they have really changed the channel box. Let's go there. I'm gonna move it in place. Come on, folks. I'm going to bring them out of this subgroup here and throw that group away. Objects. There we go. This is the guy I'm looking for. Well, modify, center pivot. Okay. What I'm going to get, wherever I meet these things up, is an ugly hard edge. Okay? So I can create an undercut. And I really need things to be of two different sizes to do this. So you should think this out before you go duplicating something. So what I would do this if this were my first window. I would take this and separate them out. What I think I'll do is take this edge loop that defines the inside of the window here and scale it in some. Okay, make sure it's still flush. Okay. Now I'm going to take this guy and bring him in. And what I'm trying to avoid is this CG looking join. This is what I don't want to see. If you make things out of separate pieces, I don't want to see them joined like this. Let's see how this looks. Well, get some light on it. There we go. I don't want to see that harsh CG edge. So the way to get away from that, because we're going to do high resolution, is to create an undercut, which if you've ever done sculpting, you'll learn about that you can't have them when you're doing casting a mold or something like that. So I'm going to take this edge loop, make sure I got the whole thing, and scale it in a little bit. And it would be really nice to have an extra softness here. I can add one edge loop. Well, what I'll do first is scale this guy in too. Less so though. Okay. And then add an edge loop. Probably should have. Oops. Um, okay. So now I've just kind of created I'm going to create kind of a shadow casting. And if I meet that right up nicely, I want to make sure no light passes through. And make sure they interpenetrate a little bit. And let's take, well, this is going to show it better if I create a light with shadows. This is a directional light. Where'd it go? Where'd it go? Look, everything's disappearing. I'll show you why that is. I'm going to hit the camera settings. That's my directional light. Perspective camera. The near clip and far clip plane are stupid small. Okay, so that's how I fix that. Oh, let's look at our renderer. Let's go back to Legacy. Well, now I don't know why it's acting ugly like this. So we're just going to have to ignore it. Now where did my light go? Okay, I'm going to scale this light up. There we go. It's pointing that way. I want to rotate it. This is like the sun, so think of it as the sun angle. And if I hit the 7 key and then go up here in lighting and say shadows, it should turn on shadows. And let's come in and see if that helps us. See, my graphics card is not keeping up here. And it's a little softer. Let me change the lighting, the light angle. Well, you can see the light catch on this edge, and if I came in really close, this should be a lot better quality too. Let's try one more render. It's so in the shadows, it's hard to tell. Let's make that shadow a little longer, and here's a trick to brighten up my shadows. Create an ambient light. Ooh, killer ambient light. We don't want anything like that. That's strong. That'll just keep my shadows from being quite so dark. So that was a 0.25. And it's probably too bright. Well, I'm batting 1,000 here. Where's my shadow? Oh, Maya software. I forget this all the time because I almost never render in Maya software. You've set a light, you see the shadows. Where are they? Where are they? You know, this is really could make you crazy. So you hit this little guy up here. This is render settings. So you can go to Windows, rendering editors, render settings right here too. Okay. If you're rendering in Maya software, you have to turn ray tracing on. I had this fantasy that they would fix that by now. Ray tracing options, just turn it on. Ugh. There we go. And my shadows are not great quality, you can see, but my image isn't great quality. I'm not going to worry about that. There's all these little, but I think that's helping. a little better. Anyway, think about it. Let's see. It's probably not enough of a undercut, but it's a way to help create a shadow, an extra shadow, an extra occlusion from the lighting, so that when you, let me just look at how this is constructed, when you start doing really complicated things and you start doing things like ambient occlusion passes, you want to be able to show that the light is beginning to be occluded there, and it's not just this sharp, unrealistic. This sharp, unrealistic piece. Let's see. And I'm not seeing quite well enough to get all these tiny details. Let's see. I have really low quality. Let's turn it on highest production and see what we get. Okay. I still feel like it's really too sharp, but I can play with that and make it better. Let's say that kind of beveled everything a little bit. Average some of the changes. But of course it made the whole thing smaller. But that's okay. Go back to being an object. I'm afraid I may have to go back to 15 because my graphics card is so crazy unhappy. And that's a problem for it might be a problem for you guys too if you have an older computer and you don't want to go out and buy a new graphics card. You may want to stick with 15. Putting the wireframe on shaded so I can see where and how these guys intersect. Okay, this is getting a little, there you go. Now you can kind of see that these are two separate objects and there's a darker shadow between them. Hallelujah. I was afraid I was really messing up there. And that's why I like to see either undercuts or lots of extra edges that soften the transition, but I don't like to see all those extra edges like the first time we tried to bevel this guy and all these edges were being beveled. Okay, so I hope that's of some help. So you make your shelf of the most common tools that you would use, and there are very few. You'll find you're going to use very few tools over and over and over, so don't let all this craziness affect you and make you anxious and oh my god, how am I ever going to learn to do this? Okay, just pick out a few tools. These are my favorite: extrusion, merge, delete, and add edge loops. Merge and delete is sometimes generally for mistakes, and add edge loops and extrude is for constructing things. Most things I do are constructed by extrusion and box modeling, and then sometimes smoothing, which I showed you before, how to make a cube into a sphere. kind of ideas. But also, if I take this guy and smooth it, I'm going to get a lot of excessive geometry that is quite unnecessary. Why are you being this way? Let's go to use default material note, and I'm looking for well, smooth shade all. Okay. Flat shade all. How about that? It's not looking any better. Again, if you see this, it's probably your graphics card too. So, okay, I know I lost a thought there, but let's not. Just one thing, I don't want to see flat roofs like this. So take all these guys inside. You know, I can't work like this. I can't see this. I would take way back when it was a simple cube. If you're not going to have a roof made of extruded out to an angled roof, if you're going to have a flat roof, just really easily take that first you know, roofs on buildings like that are kind of like this way it faces. You know, they're tar. If you've ever been up there, they have a ledge. Get out of my way. And they go down just a little bit. And then you put tar on the roof, so in case your camera ever gets high, like you have, you know, any kind of establishing shot, you want something like that. You want dimension on your roof. Okay, we'll talk about more advanced modeling later. Maybe I'll be a little more cohesive, and I might switch back to 2015 until it comes time to render in Arnold, just so that you don't have to look at that